right, you're tuned into the DOHP Signal. Real conversations with people doing meaningful work. I'm your host, Hanley, former military medic, author of Photos from the Front Lines, and the founder of DOHP. My guest today, he's an educator, a craftsman, doctoral researcher in psychology, and the founder and director of One Pointed Inc. My brother from another mother, Steve Lawrence. Steve, how we doing, buddy?
I'm good, Derek. Good to see you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Our inaugural episode, and I couldn't think of a better person to help kick this off, man. Great to have
That's
you.
remarkable. Yeah, I'm honored, man. Thank you.
Cool. So I just want to kind of tee it off with what I feel is kind of the crux of the matter of what you have been studying and what you speak upon, which is attention, focus, and kind of how that manifests in our human experience.
My area of focus has, in somehow or another, ended up on this track of what I call meditative psychology. It's within the realm of psychology in general, but the really trying to work with this concept that, as you're saying, attention, focus, creativity, temperament, emotional regulation. It it's all a cognitive process, right? It's all movement of mind ultimately, and the quality and the nature of the mind is going to all but determine the nature of our lived experience. So I was drawn toward the philosophies of the Vedics, the yogis, in my mid 20s, and started to engage in meditation practices on my own. And so it was sort of a combination of the interest that I had found in the philosophies, and then the idea of a practice of what we call meditation. This idea of a practice that sort of it reconstitutes the nature of the mind and our relationship with the mind. And in the field of meditative psychology, essentially the idea is asking, we're asking how could we use meditative practices as, for lack of a better term, treatment, to help cultivate attention, focus, creativity, emotional regulation. And, I find that what most people could experience on their day-to-day reality, by introducing the idea of meditative psychology, it's also it's often convoluted, and sort of, you get the images of what meditators are and what a meditator is and who they have to be and how they have to sit and for how long. And it's all of that, but it's actually trying to separate the concept, the word meditation, even the word mindfulness. We can get into why I might have some qualms with the idea of the word. These are minor details, really, but meditation, mindfulness, one pointed attention, one pointed focus. It's a state of consciousness. It's a state of being. So, looking at saying with the idea of meditation, there's realms and depths of meditation. There's transcendental meditation, when you're in a deep state of meditation for 20, 25, 35, 45 minutes. There's key shifts that occur within the psyche, and that transcendence is transcending the mind itself. You're transcending personality. You're transcending the structures of what our story is in the nature of our world. We're going beyond that. And then that's when you find altered states, where you might have deeper, what people might deem as deep experiences, but breaking beyond and going into a void of a stillness, of a quiet, of a deep peace. And that's what often people are seeking to find when they go into those realms. So there's like the heavy transcendental, but then in my research, I've been using micro meditations, 30-second practice that you can engage in to initiate the state of consciousness, which is within the spectrum of a meditative state. And then we break that down. Should continue to break that down into all the nuances of it.
Why is it so hard for us to have focus and attention? Like, what are like living in the modern digital age? Like, what are some of the? I mean, I feel like it's a constant assault on our attention. But what are some of the factors that you've kind of uncovered with those difficulties?
I think there's two things come to mind. One is the fluctuations of the mind, of the psyche, of consciousness, cognition, mind, thinking. There's the fluctuations in the quality of those types of thoughts, if we want to say types of thoughts. And then there's, you could say, the inspiration behind the thoughts. So there's the movement, and then there's like almost like the quality of the movement, or what the movement actually is. So if you were speaking with, say, a first responder, they could be home doing whatever it is that they're doing. Or anybody can be home doing whatever it is that they're doing, and you're finding it difficult. It's very active. The mind is racing. Dealing with somebody firsthand, you're in the situation and the mind is racing. But you could also be home and the mind is calm. On the way to a call, the mind is calm. When you engage in the heavy lift of whatever that emergency is, you might zone and go completely in and focus, and everything else goes away and there's nothing but this, right? We're pleased, or it's less of an issue if the situation brings you in and you're completely inundated in it. And that's when you get things that when you're passionate about something, or it's very creative and it's engaging, it's interesting, right? Purposeful. You're in. The question is when there's not the external forces or factors or relationships that grab you. What is the default mode of the mind, of the psyche, of the biological processes and the psychological processes that make you at any one point in time? So we have the occurrences, and then we have like the inspiration behind those occurrences, and there's a psychological process, but there's also a very deep philosophical process, because you can find that through these conversations you establish a new relationship with the mind. It takes on a new form, right? So when you go into a meditative state, one of the interesting things in the early on, and this continues on for years for me personally, is that constant encounter with the fact that I am not the mind. The mind is something that is simply occurring. So then to take that step back again, okay, there's an occurrence and there's an equality of occurrence. So when you're looking at the quality of the occurrence, you can't help but find yourself sort of wading into personality dispositions, inclinations, the nature of the individual, right? So if you're someone who is prone to anxiety or neuroses, as is categorically called, you could have a rampant angst. But what is the nature of the thought? What are you anxious about? And very often people who suffer, to the degree to which they suffer with, they say, generalized anxiety, it's anxiety for its own sake. There's no reason. Depression, there's categorical situations that you could look at, like you know, the depression, and it's atypical depression when they're diagnosing it and they're looking at it, like, why is it not depressive disorder, or is it just a depressive state? You hit these you come up and then these lulls for a couple of months, but you come out of it. You maybe you're in one now, and it's weird. It's not something I'm used to experiencing. I'm within a few months of having this experience, not a few years. Those are two completely different situations that you're having a conversation with someone about. So it might be circumstantial within a situation that's creating anxiety or depression, or you may be a disposition that's inclined toward that state, toward that quality. When you're in that state and in that quality, through meditative psychology, what we're doing is we're detaching ourselves from the fluctuations of the mind and the system of mind and thinking, and saying, I'm not doing anything. It's not me. It's something that's just happening. So once that separation is created, you create a healthy dissociation with the quality of the thinking and the movement of the thoughts. And then from that point, this is with a good therapist or conversations or philosophizing or writing or reading. And you can look at what is the nature of the thought. Is it self it's self inundating, where it's about me and my income and my place in the world and my outlook toward other people. You could end up finding that it's not. So there's the quality, but then there's the nature of the thinking, and through the philosophizing and through the time and the integration over time. For me, it's been decades of this constant integration and this discovery and rediscovery. What is the quality of thinking? What is its motivation? And if it's short-sighted, lowercase s, selfish, it's all about me, which most of the time and things that are about me, I can see that and then withdraw from it and rectify it in real time, over and over and over and over. And then you're rewiring brain systems, you're rewiring the patterns of thinking and thoughts, and then relationships change. In your interaction with the world change. They're going to expect you to be a certain way, so you act that way. It's creating conflict within your psyche, and I mean, it's rabbit hole. It really is rabbit hole.
You said a couple of things there that were pretty interesting. One was the focus during an emergency. I can tell you firsthand how powerful that is when you are fully, because that's one of the things I actually miss about being a paramedic and being in the field. It's the adrenaline, it's the helping people, it's all that stuff, but just everything else drops away. You're completely focused on that patient, their vital signs, how they're presenting, what their skin's looking like. Like there's so many things that you are analyzing in that moment and processing and predicting. And, it's just, there's never been a time, and there probably never will be a time again, when my brain is 100% all systems operational, focused, functioning on this one task to save this person's life. Like you can't get that in normal civilian walking through the
Yeah.
grocery store and things like that. So that's like, I think that's kind of an entry point, I think, for people who do these types of professions of like, oh, I have felt that. I have felt the one-pointed mind when I'm in the middle of an emergency and everything that I was worried about, from the week or from the family or in my life is gone. It's not even there. Only thing that matters is this one thing that I'm focused on. And, kind of cultivating that outside of the emergency environment, kind of like you're saying, when you don't have those external circumstances, how can you get back to that level of focus and attention? And as you put it, the one-pointedness, because as you're saying, you're not your mind. There's a great book, A Liberated Mind by Stephen Hayes, founder of the ACT therapy discipline, who had a great tip for me that I loved, which is name your mind. Name it. If you name it something, it then becomes something separate from you, the transcendental self, the awareness, which is aware of the mind and what it's putting out. So if you name your mind, now it becomes something separate, and then you can observe it dispassionately as the observer. And, the act isn't about changing your thought. It's about changing your relationship to the thought processes that are continuously happening. And I'd be interested to hear how that resonates with you.
There's a lot to unpack, particularly around the environment and the experience that pulls you in. not to say that the situation in and of itself is easy to experience, right? Because very often, in many of those cases, it might not be easy. We're just talking. It doesn't make it easier. It's just that there's something that's dialing and pulling us in, right? I find that when I'm engaging in craft, when I'm engaging in the arts, uh, like I'd said before, rattled off quick things that are interesting and compelling and novel, and all the reasons why we might go into the zone, right? We could whatever books we might want to find on the zone, go pick one up and it'll explain it.
Flow.
Flow, all the flow state, right? The challenge, the difficulty comes in that we may want to seek that state of mind when there isn't a situation or circumstance that pulls us in, and because we can't find it when that isn't occurring, we could self-judge, kind of get. So the question is, like, to what extent is that what we are trying to find, or whether it's even attainable or achievable, right?
Sure.
Relatively speaking, the morning cup of coffee, right, the morning drive, right, like in those moments, it's actually, as you're saying, like naming the mind and simply seeing that I am angry, right, or I am afraid, or I feel anxiety.
I'm running the anger program. I'm running
Right.
the I hate myself program. I'm running the naming the program, I think, too, is also helpful once you can identify this pattern. If it keeps coming up and keeps coming up, and you're like, oh, there it is. I got it.
Right. In
And
this
you don't get
philosophy,
sucked into it. You don't get fused with it, as the terminology that they use. You can defuse from the mind in that
you could
way.
at least diffuse from the it's interesting because there's a biological movement and then there's a psychological movement, and they're a positive feedback loop. So as we were saying before about inclinations of angst or depression or fear or anger, there's a physiological
Hmm.
experience of feeling, and then there's a psychological construct framework that is related in some way. The question is, to what extent is the biological processes inspiring
Hmm.
mental
Hmm.
processes, where the mental processes inspiring the biological
Yep.
processes? So this is where the philosophy becomes interesting, because if you could get a couple of go-tos, for instance, you take something like anger, a thwarted desire. I want something, I can't get it.
Hmm.
Fear, I'm afraid of losing what I have or not getting what I want. Well, what am I like? What is it that I want that I'm not getting,
Hmm.
that is making me angry? Or what is it that I'm afraid of losing? Or what am I afraid of not getting? What am I afraid of not acquiring? And that's where I said before, like taking a step back and examining what is the motivation for that type of thinking, right? And so finances is a common fear-inducing response, a trigger, stressor, right?
Hmm.
So in the moment, when you're aware of when you happen to be aware of the fact that you have anxiety about bills or whatever it may end up being, um, fear being the precursor of angst, essentially, right? And anger being the precursor often to depression, right? But it's muddy, it's all mixed
Hmm.
in there
Yeah.
somehow. Um, so in that instant, the method would be to say, okay, I feel the anxiety in this moment, not that I haven't felt it for the last, or not that it hasn't been there for the last 3 weeks, but I happen to be I happen to have a glimpse of it in this moment where I can detach and and see and feel that, oh, it's there. Okay, I feel and see it. Where is the fear? It's in the thinking. Fear of what? Of not paying my bills. Okay, all right. Step back right now. Are you good? Right now, I'm okay, but I have to do something to, okay, well, what can you do now to remedy it? I can't do anything. It's 8 o'clock at night. Okay, no problem. Now, mind you, this isn't a light switch scenario where you just turn it off, right? More like a dimmer switch where you try to temper it and draw it down a little bit, a little bit. So in that moment, you can say, all right, you just become present. It's just here, right? Now, as we get into the now, we know the words that are out there. Nothing's new in this conversation that we're having, right? Like you can get any book on all these key terms, these concepts. So the important part of it we're trying to do here is like wrestle with where does it become tangible and relevant in the day-to-day experience, you know? So you have the awareness of anger. I'm angry at her. Okay. What did she said this and she says that. Okay, so what are you afraid, what is it that you want that you're not getting? Okay, you want this, you're not getting that. Why do you want that? What's the point of whatever it is that you actually, and is that actually what you want? Probably not. So also very often in anger is related with fear. What are you afraid of losing by not getting what you want? I'm afraid of losing this. Okay, well, what if you did lose that? Or is it actually a reality that you're going to lose that or not get that? Or are you just perceiving from your own personality and your own short-sighted becomings that's initiating this melee of emotion, right? And that's what I was saying before. You have the movement, but then you have the quality and the nature of what's underneath it. So I find very often that emotions and thoughts, they're tertiary to what is actually occurring. And it can get so, like I said, there's rabbit holes and turtles all the way down, but it can become so frayed that we don't even know what we're angry or mad or afraid. It's just, and then throw that in the mix that you're saying, like the inundation of all that's coming at us. And if there's that slight imbalance, you think about foundations of a building and there's just a little wobbly there, and then you go up, just keep stacking, keep stacking, keep stacking. It's inevitable that we're going to see some cracks in the brickwork over time, right? So working our way down through all those layers, we come to, at least in my school of psychology, that it's transpersonal psychology. And my area of focus has largely been with teachers, with educators, so touch on transpersonal psychology just in a moment, but where you have your experience in, to speak to first responders, fear, anger, it doesn't matter. It's relative. For teachers, I had often found that they would become angry with a class because they don't realize this, but they're afraid, almost like a principal is going to walk by the door and look in the window and see something going on. So they're afraid of the perceptions that others might have of them of being a quality teacher. And then their words are acting out of the fear that they might, all that, instead of just being here, not even thinking about that. It's irrelevant what people think, right? And so many, not that it's irrelevant, right? But it's relevant. Reputation is relevant. It's important, obviously, right? But if we assume people are thinking something, they're probably not even thinking it, but we think that they're thinking it, and then we operate from that mindset, right? So again, that other level of like, where is it all coming from? This deep interpersonal work that an individual has to go through to delve into it's not for the faint of heart, So transpersonal psychology adds a fourth pillar to the school of philosophy. The three essential pillars of psychology, which is to say the study of the spirit, psyche is spirit, right? So psychology was actually the study of spirit in the early Latin roots. It's become a science where now we'll talk about biology, we talk about cognition, and we talk about culture, right? Why I might do what I do. You say what you say, think what you think, in part because of biological processes, cognitive processes within like your personality, disposition, intelligence, competencies. Those things are measurable, right? Like we can give you an assessment and I can tell you who you're going to vote for just by not asking you who you're going to vote for. I just ask about your personality, right? Openness, conscientiousness, agreeableness, all these different qualities of personality are pretty accurate in determining predicting who you're going to vote for, what your political party is, what your profession's like, what do you enjoy, right? So you have biology, cognition, and then cultural impacts, which we say we're from the same area, right? Like we have same gender, same skin color, but we have widely different cultures and who we are as individuals, the family background, experiences, right? So you have those three, and then transpersonalism brings in this fourth pillar to say that we're all actually is a spiritual process, that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, literally bringing back in the core of the word psychology, the study of spirit. Transpersonalism studies the spiritual movement of spirit. And then not even adding that pillar, it's almost like you're adding a layer underneath all three of them, because it seems that biological expressions are in part a byproduct of a spiritual vibration. So is cognitive processes and thoughts a result of spiritual vibrations, and cultural structures, the fabrics of culture are very often similar across cultures, across languages, barriers, whatever that may end up being. And to see that so many cultures have these similar dynamics, Carl Jung's work was important in this when he was studying archetypes and coming up with this idea of this collective unconscious from which myths and stories arise. There's a collective unconscious beyond our conscious mind that we all share, according to Jung's philosophies and theories, which are relatively accepted within the mainstream, this idea of a collective unconscious. We could discuss it, whether it's that specifically that or not, but that's to say that the realm of the collective unconscious, the realm of archetypes within the myths and within all of these stories, they're born from spiritual expressions coming forward in a creative lens within the quietude of the individual as they're waiting for the poem to arise, the characters' expressions to move, right? And then they're just shared. Well, you didn't create that. And as a songwriter, many have said this, poetry, you hear it. It comes to you. Melody comes to you, right? And often the more we get out of the way, we quote unquote get out of the way, the more that creative fluidity happens. So this is essentially this idea that with transpersonalism, we don't negate biology and cognition and culture, of course, right? But to be at the table and to have a conversation and to deny spirit, you shouldn't be at the table, right? Because you're going to miss something. And we don't mind explaining it to you, right? Being facetious, you know what I'm saying? But you have to, by bringing in that spiritual dimension, that's when you can see thoughts being tertiary. That's why I said they're tertiary. There's a spiritual movement, biological triggers, and then relationships out there. We're out here trying to look at this when actually it's much more of a spiritual expression.
Great stuff, Steve. The Dope Signal will be right back after these important messages.
Derek Hanley here, a photographer, a videographer, a veteran combat medic.
Derek Hanley is with us today.
We have on the line with us Derek O'Hanley. What a remarkable book. Obviously, you had no idea when you embarked on this journey of embedding with paramedics and, frontline responders. There was no way to know that a worldwide pandemic was on its way.
His goal was to document the day-by-day life-saving that they do. And now you can experience what it was like.
He's done a book that should be a coffee table book in homes and offices. It's something in the office that somebody's going to pick up, look at, and be moved by. This is the book.
Our military protects us overseas. Our first responders are the ones who protect us at home. And we need to start thinking about what we can do to take care of medics like we do for our military.
The book is Photos from the Front Line.
Photos from the front line.
Photos from the front lines.
Photos from the front lines.
So that's dope, DOHP.net, and you can find Derek's book there.
All right. Welcome back to the Dope Signal. Derek Hanley here speaking with Steve Lawrence, founder of One Pointed Inc. We got pretty deep there, Steve. Let's talk a little bit about some practical applications of some of the techniques that you like to do and show to folks, because I know just from your video that you had that, some people were able to have some great takeaways from the workshop that you were putting on for them and things like that. So what are some things that, your kind of average folk who doesn't know much about meditation, doesn't have much time, what are some things that they could do and maybe implement immediately, who are in some of these kind of high stress career fields and things like that to bring a little bit more stillness into their life?
Well, I think I want to touch again briefly on this, maybe trying to divorce our relation, like what we consider meditation to be, right? That it's not necessarily a 20-minute process, though it can be. It's a state of mind. It's a state of consciousness, quality of consciousness. And so I had long felt that meditation should be prescribed to an individual, depending upon who they are, where they're at, their dispositions and whatnot. So I had found that micro meditations are beautiful little practices, and micro meditation is like a 30 to 60 second routine. And to briefly break it down, there's a breathing component, there's a body awareness component, and then there's a psychological component. So most meditation is going to deal with first going to the breath. Breath is the key. Breath is the key. Breath is here. You can feel the breath. When you feel anxious or stressed, what's the first thing that happens? You take a deep breath, right? It's impulse. So, and instinct. So we have a breath pattern of a count. With a micro meditation, keep it to 30 to 60 seconds, and you can choose a breathing pattern. And with my participants and the research that I had done within education, within teachers, they applied micro meditations 3 times within the professional setting for 1 week. In micro meditation, 30 to 60 seconds, each teacher would pick the breath, the body, or a psychological movement. So with breathing, it could be a 4-second inhalation, 6-second exhalation. That's 10 seconds. Do that 3 times. That's 30 seconds. You got your pattern. Or 1 minute. Do it 6 times. By breathing in 4 seconds and then exhaling for 6, your exhale is longer, obviously. And that exhalation, that extended exhalation, is going to activate a parasympathetic system. So Bio 101, we have sympathetic that it activates the body with anxiety, with energy, excitement. Parasympathetic brings us back down again. They say that they're what do they say? Autonomic, right? There's an autonomic system, right? So what you can do is hijack it. So if you do a 6-second inhalation, 4-second exhalation, that's activating energy. You might want to say, I got to get into something here. Let me get awake. 4 seconds in, or 6 seconds in, 4 seconds out. You could do 5 in, 5 out. You could do 5 in, 10 out, and do the math, right? While you're doing your chosen breath practice, you have a body awareness where you can scan the inhalation from the toes. Just move your awareness through the body to the crown of the head. Exhalation from the crown of the head back down out the toes. You can move into the center of the chest. Just feel awareness in the center. Body point, if there's tension, you can move your awareness into that area of the body and almost open it like the palm. Just picture it, imagine it opening and releasing. So breath, body, and then this very important part is the psyche of moving, like almost like an affirmation of sorts, where you can think about a situation or a person and give it grace. You can allow yourself to give yourself grace. You're okay. You're enough. It's fine. It's going to be okay. You've worried about many things in the past, and where are you now? They must have all worked out one way or the other. So you shift consciously and deliberately, you shift the psyche from lack to fulfillment. So with the breathing, you move down out of the mind into the breath. So you're moving out of thinking, out of the mindscape with the breath, then to the body, which is presence. It's all here. You can't feel the body and think about how you're going to get revenge on that other person while you're gently scanning. It just doesn't, they don't equate, right? And then that last part, gratitude, is another very powerful one. Think of something minutia that you're grateful for. Your car started. Great. That's good. It's full. It's fullness, not lacking, which is often where anxiety, depression, fear, it's often those thoughts are about the past, about the future, usually related to lack or potential lack.
Explain a little bit your story about how you got to this point of bringing into the existence the one-pointed program, because you've been a tradesperson, you've been an international teacher and whatnot. So just give us a little bit about your story about how you kind of gotten to this point and why you think it's such an important use of your time and resources.
I had found that it was the most important use of my time and resources, particularly when I was a teacher. For myself, before I was a teacher, like as you had mentioned, I was a craftsman, and I was using meditation just for myself, and I fell in love with it. While I was a teacher, I had realized that the students are not going to be paying attention to me if they're not focusing. So I can say and do it. I can sit up here like one of those wind-up monkeys with the tambourines, just up here, just doing my thing, and nothing's going to stick, But they also were going through a lot of stress, anxiety. It's difficult to be a student, and so I had the background of the knowledge. So I presented a workshop to educators called The Science of Meditation for Teachers and Students. And that was a hard bite off of Leonard Perlmutter's work, The Heart and Science of Yoga, from the American Meditation Institute, he and his wife, Janice. And so I shared the workshop looking at the biology of the biology and psychology of attention and emotion. And I shared it with teachers so that they could understand if you could cultivate a one-pointed environment within your classroom, it's going to help you and the students be able to stay focused, right? And break it down, the nuance of how it applies to a lesson design and all that. It's all there. But it resonated with the teachers. And then over the years, I ended up being asked to give the workshops again and again. And I did over 12 countries. Then when I retired from the classroom, I had already been a psychology teacher. So that's when I fell in love with the field of psychology. And then to boot, I actually found myself in pseudo-therapeutic roles, relationships with folks, like guiding them into deep meditative practices, deep breath work. Found that I had an inclination toward healing and helping others. So once I started to give the workshops for the educators, I had realized that nothing else is more important than the cultivation of a one-pointed mind. And if we can do that for the teachers, see, my suspicion was, well, it's not a suspicion, teachers are struggling. I mean, the state of our education system is dismal, to say the least. And teachers are done. They're burned out. They're toasted. So, like, how are you going to help the teachers? So I had this suspicion that these micro meditations could be a tool to help them. And when I had done the research, I had 7 participants in 4 states. And it was a hermeneutic study looking at the lived experience. And every one of the teachers had an improvement in their lived experience by implementing 3 micro meditation practices a day for just 5 days, right? And then over time, I had this sense that it should be a project that could work with districts and communities and organizations to help bring another approach to psychological and spiritual well-being.
And you're also talking about, not just tailoring this for educators, but this could also be for manufacturing, corporate setting, basically anywhere where there's people operating towards a mission. It seems like this could be beneficial, no?
Mm. It's it's a little like quirky in the sense of like, human optimization, and it gets kind of into that world. And
Mm.
it's not my heart, but but it is truly about human optimization. And yes, the nature of the conversation. So to go in to work with first responders, the conversation, the examples, the anecdotes might be different than when you're dealing with teachers and educators, but what's real? Stress and feeling is real. It depends on who you are and where you're at, and the question is, do these practices help, and do they provide some promise for folks? And I think the short answer is mostly yes, right? The research will show that not everyone's inclined toward meditation, right? And then actually engaging in meditation for some people can induce anxiety, right? I have a sneaking suspicion, though, that in many of those cases, meditation-induced anxiety is probably has more to do with the individual suddenly encountering anxiety in a new their anxiety that's been there in a new way, and it sort of puts it in your face a little heavier. And that's where therapy and integration and support really is important. Um, but I mean, if the proof is in the pudding, really, right? As they say, try the practice, try to integrate these, and observe how it changes you.
I'm going to segue a little bit into an interesting project you have going on called the Love Project. I was able to see some video of it being set up in Washington Park in Albany, and got to see some of the interactions with the folks who were encountering it. And it's one of those deceptively simple things that I think can have a big emotional impact on people. And I think I personally would love to see more things like this coming into existence in our world because, where's the love, man? There's so much hate and division and hyperpolarization and all these other things that we forget that love is underneath everything. And that's love is the reason for our existence in reality. We are a way for the universe to know itself, and the universe is love. So, talk a little bit about the Love Project, how you became involved with it, how it came into being, and what do you see the future of it kind of going?
Well, I was associate director at Arts, Letters, and Numbers for a couple 3 years, and an artist out of Cleveland. Her name's Pamela Heller. She has the I Love You project, justsayIloveyou.com plug. And she reached out to Arts, Letters, and Numbers, ALN, and while I was associate director, we wanted to engage in a project. And I was struck by the project immediately by as you're saying, that deceptively simple gesture of what she has ended up creating, and just recording people saying "I love you" and then projecting that within communities. Just "I love you, I love you." Right? Much like my work in psychology, where it's kind of like a rubber meets the road situation, where you're trying to, like, there's philosophies, but then there's actually a practice, and what can you actually do? Where does the philosophy matter? Right. So that's where I came with, again, I think also a deceptively simple practice, like a micro meditation, consistently changes things, completely changes things. With this I Love You project, she wanted to create a kiosk. And again, as a craftsman, as an artist, and working here at Arts, Letters, and Numbers, I was open to it. So we ended up creating the kiosk, built the kiosk from a clean sheet design, and presented it at the Tulip Festival. It's spent more than a few months at the Armory Studios in Schenectady. It's been to the Egg, and the idea behind this I Love You kiosk is that it was made by 120 different people. I created the design and we put it all together, but all the tiles and all of the mosaics that are on there were created by community members with community projects. Schools, 3 schools came in.
Describe how it looks for people who may be listening and can't see any of the visuals and
so
stuff.
It's a hyperboloid shape. So if you have a cone, and if you hold the bottom of a cone and you twist the top of the cone, the sides will concave. It'll fall, twist sort of within itself, and that's a hyperboloid shape of the kiosk. It's 10 feet tall, 3-foot base, embedded in the center of it is a screen, and that's where the recordings of the people saying "I love you" are on there, and it's covered in mosaic tiles, about 8 to 10 square inches of these tiles, and each of those tiles is made of a mosaic glass, and they all should say "I love you" or relate to love in some way. And then the whole kiosk is covered in those mosaic tiles, and it travels, it moves. So the vision is to sort of see these like popping up within different communities. You create a project for a community, promote it, and you get the community to come together to build it, and then it actually becomes a permanent installation in a park, wherever the community might want it to be. And it's like you say, it's just one of those deceptively simple things. And I've been involved in a fair bit of throughout my life in terms of art projects or community development or whatever it might have ended up being. But every so often you come across something that just seems to have it, and and every artist wants to try to find it. And it's just like, it's either there or it isn't. It happens to be there with this project. When people see it, it's striking. It gets their attention, and it puts a smile on their face. You see guys walking by it with their gals, and gals with their guys, and guys with their guys, and gals with their gals, and they come together. They get a hug, they get a selfie, they say "I love you" to each other, and then they carry on their merry way. Just this, like you said, this is it. I like the phrase, this idea of the persuasion by the wind of a feather. Persuasion through the wind of a feather. Just this gentle stroke. And it's a stroke of genius. It's a beautiful piece. Yeah.
I wonder what this will inspire, what people seeing this will inspire, as far as, extrapolations from this idea of just having a pop-up art installation that has some sort of positive messaging or something that they're communicating to whoever happens to wander by, that could, brighten their day, positively influence their life, put a smile on their face, put a spring in their step, like that's what you want art to do. And if you can do it in a way that's making someone feel valued and loved and cared for and connected to the other human beings around them, I mean, that's solid gold.
Yeah, you're talking about 3 degrees separation, 2 to 3 degrees separation, Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to say briefly too, in terms of using the micro meditations, when my experience with the teachers was that they were also looking at 3 degrees removed of the impact that they were having on others with this shift in internal state. They found more time for students. They found more time for their colleagues, right? And then that changed that person's day. It had it's immeasurable. It's incalculable, really, to know the power of these gestures, We're all very powerful in our opportunities.
See if you had any final thoughts for our audience, things that may kind of encapsulate what you're working on, or any takeaways that you think that you can give them to have any deeper understanding for the stuff you're working on.
Yeah. Honestly, the first thing that came to mind was, I had mentioned before about giving ourselves grace, like we're okay, we're good enough, we're fine. And though things may need to change, and though there's a calling, this idea, this elan vital, this vital surge is coming forward to try to do whatever it is that we might be inspired to do. If you go into a little bit of work within meditation, a little work with the breath, and just disconnect just some, when you come back out of that space, so much is redefined. It takes new form, it takes new shape. So I think that begs the question, what was real to begin with? And we can sit in our tropes and in our stories and in our own little world, and there are little worlds that we're in, and we assume they're gospel. We assume it's absolute and ultimate truth, and then we'll cling to those truths, and we won't heal because we have to cling to the truth that we're in pain. So by taking a half a step back, give the grace, and just give yourself a fighting chance, you need some tools. There's some mechanisms that are there, and they're all but essential, I think, from my own personal experience. Integrate the practices, engage them, and if I'd be happy to support, to serve in any way that I can. If if any individual has questions or they would like to program the One Pointed Ink, if they would like One Pointed Ink to come out, work with the community, work with individuals, whether it's an I Love You kiosk or it's a One Pointed Mind workshop, whether it's online, whatever, the project is there to help serve the wider community in a way that's loving and resonant, however that might be for them.
What do you got coming up? What do you need to plug?
Well, we've got, it might be a little premature for this by the time this comes out, but the I Love You kiosk is going to be at SPAC a couple of times this summer, which is going to be exciting. The Philadelphia Orchestra is coming to SPAC, so there's Family Day for there. Also, Saratoga Performing Arts Center, by the way, SPAC in upstate New York. The New York State Ballet is coming up to SPAC, so the kiosk will be there for that. We're looking at developing some fall wellness conferences for educators and leaders within the capital region. That's going to be after summer. But aside from that, we just keep plugging.
Where can people find you?
You can find me at TO Steve L on most of the platforms. TO Steve L at 2 Steve L, and then there's the onepointedmind.com is the website itself for the project for the One Pointed Ink. And go to Pamela's website, Just Say I Love You, and learn more about the I Love You project.
I feel like we could talk for 4 or 5 more hours about all the stuff you got going on and the research and the psychology and everything. So we'll have to have you on again at some point and continue the conversation. Steve, appreciate your time, man. Good to see you, brother. And we'll talk again soon.
Yes, sir. Peace, brother.
All right. You've been listening to the DOHP Signal. Tune back in for the next episode.